on, you bastard!
Brought to you by supporters who probably have better taste than this schmuck.
There was a pretty big step up between 2023 and 2024 in terms of quality. Where the previous year felt a smidge aimless, trying to find its footing, that footing was most certainly found the following year. Legacy evolved into Legacy Evolution with a much more rounded cast and some killer releases. Studio Series finally sank its teeth into a proper new movie, for better or for worse. Availability in Australia improved, SS86 really upped the ante, and we finally saw the introduction of the poorly named but long-awaited Gamer Edition sub-theme. Although it definitely had some jank at the start, it eventually evolved into something truly delightful. So at the very least, we began that journey. It was a pretty good year overall, evident by the fact I wasn't able to provide a full 23 list entries. Yes, I only just managed to scrape by with 20, and even then, they don't start being real stinkers until like the second half of the list. There aren't even any dishonorable mentions like last time. It's just this simple 20, and that's it. Barely scraping the bottom of the barrel with this one, in a good way. With that said, honestly, this shit has been way overdue at this point. So without further ado, greetings Cybertronians, I'm DrLockdown, and today's diagnosis pertains to the top 20 worst Transformers that graced my collection in the year 2023. I know my word doesn't mean much at this point, but god damn it, I am going to finish these overdue lists if it kills me. Okay, at this point, we're going to whiz through the ground rules because it's been covered at length in previous videos, and everyone who disagrees is going to complain anyway. Firstly, it's figures I received in 2023, not figures that came out in that year. The purposes of these videos is to catalogue my own collecting journey, not just focus on the entirety of what released. Secondly, purely subjective rankings. My choice, objectivity is a myth, yada yada. Thirdly, yes, the list includes third party. There's always at least one purist who gets mad and says it shouldn't count. There's also a rule where I either pick one member to represent a team or pack, or I put the whole pack/team on the article. But that doesn't particularly apply to any members here because the shit ones really stand out from the rest. Anywho, with that aside, onwards!
Number 20!
Yes, surprisingly the first wave of Legacy United actually did drop this year. In December, as a matter of fact. Well, the deluxes did at least. For the most part, it was a pretty good wave, with a snazzy Bumblebee and a solid chase. Sadly, Windblade didn't come to Australia under either release, so she had to wait a bit. Unfortunately, the entire wave couldn't quite be a slam dunk. Magnius isn't a bad figure in his construction. While he's a bit boring in terms of concept, the actual engineering on show is solid enough. The real brilliance actually lies in the joints. Everything is nice and solid. What's the term, perspective end users? Hand candy? I think that was it. Even the alt mode is decent on paper, seeming very alien yet surprisingly familiar. So, what's the main issue? Well, simply put, it's the paint. Making an entire figure out of grey plastic just isn't interesting. I appreciate that said plastic isn't of the Games Workshop ilk, and I can see they did try desperately with the extra grey wash effect, but it just doesn't work in the end. These themselves don't even do anything interesting. If you're a pull-apart former that doesn't become anything special, nor do you offer an interesting experience on your own, what's the point? Yes, there is a toy hack set that improves it greatly, but should I really be putting in extra money into a toy I'm just lukewarm on? Okay, bad question. Let me rephrase. Should I really be putting extra money into a toy that takes it from lukewarm to passable? Wouldn't that money be better spent on a toy of higher quality? At least that's how I think it should go.
Number 19!
There's going to be a bit of a theme on this list. See, with the release of Rise of the Beasts, there was definitely a feeling that Hasbro were rushing to get product out in time, despite the fact the film was delayed for a year. Instead of two distinct toy lines releasing with space between each other, they pretty much dropped back to back, leading to comparisons aplenty. Originally it was going to be younger, cheaper mainline on release, Studio Series a year later, but when the film was pushed back, they shunted the first releases into a warehouse so they all released simultaneously. Yet despite having an extra year of development behind them, the Studio Series outing often came across far worse than their Kiddlywink counterparts. For those watching my recent uploads, you'll no doubt recognize the first entry. Part of me wants to commend Studio Series 102 for trying to go above and beyond, turning a retool budget into a full figure. That push has given us truly amazing releases in the past, so the goal is there. But execution-wise, this might just be one of the messiest SS releases they've ever done, sharing more in common with the likes of the Fallen than the original SS-38 it was supposed to be based on. Perhaps this would all be well and good if this this mess of a truck was the only thing wrong with it. But there's so many tiny things wrong with the proportions, cohesion, paintwork, and other things. And the robot mode is just so jank. It looks really good in photos, but start paying attention up close and it just falls apart under scrutiny. Yes, it's accurate, way more so than the other Voyager version, but that's essentially all he has going for him. In every other aspect, he's just worse. Yes, he's ambitious, and that ambition should be recognized, but the end result kinda sucks, not gonna lie. Legitimately, if they had stuck with the original retool idea, this would have turned out much better, and thankfully in years since, people are looking back on this thing far less fondly. Display-based collectors seem to find it fine, but everyone else, especially those who regularly play with their toys, seem to feel lukewarm and frustrated. I think my observation from its standalone review really puts it best. It's incredibly telling that the reissue of SS38 sold out almost instantly, but at the time of writing, SS102 is still hanging around. There are just better Optimi on the market once you unlock yourself from wanting specifically the Rise of the Beasts version. You don't have to make excuses for it. It's okay to be a bad Optimus Prime, and to move on from it.
Number 18.
I was never a fan of the SS86 Junkions. People keep insisting they're the greatest thing ever, yet the unfinished bike mode really doesn't do it for me. Not bad figures, but hardly good ones either. So I figured 2023 was as good a time as any to track down the Reveal the Shield version, much to the distress of stop-motion reviewer. And lo and behold, a friend of mine was selling off his e-hobby version of Scrap Heap, only wanting to keep the hot rod from that set. Thing is, he also insisted on including the cup from the trio alongside it. I really didn't want this thing. I even said I'd pay the same price just for Scrap Heap. And yet he was insistent, and so I ended up with this ridiculous thing. Look, this isn't a bad mold by any means. I have the United version. I love the United version. But this just goes to show that a killer deco is equally important to sculpt and engineering. The turquoise they used is hella off, feeling kinda similar to New Age gender fluid icon Acid Storm. It looks super cheap and reminds me less of Cup and more of the old Starburst party packs that had that one watermelon flavor that tasted awful. Like, the rest of the colors were amazing, and then this arse they insist was watermelon just tasted like plastic. Still miss Starbursts though. F*** monopolies. The paint is, overall, really sloppy. The Autobot symbol in robot mode especially, it makes Armada Prime look like premium finish. Except this is supposed to be premium. It's an e-hobby figure. And don't get me started on the ridiculous battle damage they attempted. I'll gladly take how Siege did it any day. This looks less like paint scratches and more like magnesium jizz. Yes, the base figure isn't quote-unquote bad. It's still a solid mold, likely the best cup we've gotten out of the 3 modern G1 styled updates. I just never really wanted this, and yet somehow it still disappointed me. Oh well, fortunately this is gone from my collection. Ended up giving this to Quartz at TF Nation, so hopefully she'll get more fun out of it than I did. I'll just stick with the tried and true United version. Can't beat a classic.
Number 17.
Much as I love Kingdom Air Razor, I just don't think they've really managed to capture the brilliance of that original release. It's a pretty simple affair, so it's really carried by its deco and its context, and so far, nothing has really done it justice. Golden Disc Pterosaur was kinda blech. Skywarp was decent, but not quite on the same level. Buzzworthy Pterosaur, who I've only got recently, was actually a nice surprise, but still inferior. And Filch came close, but didn't quite hit the same mark. I think I'm more into the idea that we got a toy of Filch than the actual toy itself. Still a good release, but not quite as good. Still, it's a solid mold, and I can see why Hasbro keeps coming back to it. And you can see why they'd superimpose Rise of the Beast Air Razor over that mold. Sort of. While this mold isn't a retool, not even using the same original CAD model, they have absolutely copied the broad strokes of the previous Air Razor. That in itself isn't the issue. The issue is that it's so boring. The bird mode goes from this gorgeous Percher to something trying to achieve the bronze look without the bronze paint. You end up with this tahini shade that just looks really bland. Maybe it could look better with some metallic green, but it just doesn't show up enough. Like, seriously, at a certain point they just pulled way back on the Studio Series metallic paints. What happened? Where did it go? Paint can't save solidity issues though. The torso doesn't hold in place anymore, and the wings pop off at a dime. And while I dig the new foot design, inaccurate as it may be, the rest of the legs are just a mess. No longer fitting in nicely with the rest of the body. It just leads to a bird mode that loses all of the best aspects of the mold it takes inspiration from. And the robot mode? God, this is boring. The tahini gets dropped out for diarrhea, which just overpowers the whole thing. Yes, there is silver on show, but none of it comes through because the brows just take over the thing. Not that you'd be able to see much anyway. All of the mechanical detail is just so aimless. It's the equivalent of putting random scribbles on a page and calling it a cipher. Like, what is this head? It's simultaneously ugly as sin and a whole lot of nothing. The craziest thing is, they could have made this anything they wanted. Air Razor never transformed in the movie. They had the opportunity to design an awesome custom robot mode from the ground up. And funnily enough, they kinda already did in the Adjacents line. The other Air release, although a lot less articulated, is just better in every conceivable way. Probably why these things sold so poorly, mind you. AirRaiser stuck around for months, probably close to a year if memory serves. And Hasbro Australia likely knew this would happen in advance. They actually gifted these to us at the King's Comics More Than Meets the Eye event early in the year. Yeah, I didn't actually purchase this. It was a gift from Hasbro and I still feel ripped off. It's so lackluster that one of my friends actually gave his to me. So I ended up giving the spare copy to one of the Guardians of the Fans Toys order. And sure, I could get the toy hacks for these. They look pretty cool. Or I could move it on, enjoy the Kingdom version for this transformation, and the mainline version for the character. I just gotta ask, how do you copy a mold that's already fine and suck all the life out of it? Not even a retool, it's completely new, and yet it's still How does that even happen?
Number 16.
Okay, so this is kinda my fault. I sort of have an obsession with small-scale Transformers, which leads to me buying into any small-scale line Hasbro does, for better or for worse. If Mainline puts out something adjacent to Legends, I'm gonna be there, and that's how I essentially face-planted into this figure. I don't think I can call this figure bad by any means. For the audience it's going for, it's solidly built and visually appealing. Better articulation and not having blue paint caked on like too much icing would be nice, but that's not the bracket it's going for. But for me, this might just be one of the most disappointing figures on this list. Well, one of anyway. With the way the proportions work as well as the size, this is not Legends. This is just a small deluxe, and because it was packaged in vehicle mode, I wasn't aware until I transformed it. It's a real bloody shame because the team that produced these have proven in the past that they can do incredible Legends figures. But apparently kids don't like Legends, they like big things, so that scale has just been slowly but surely phasing out from Hasbro's lineup. From a logical standpoint, this figure should not be here. It's a perfectly serviceable toy, and I can't particularly point to anything and call it out as bad, at least compared to some of the more premium outings. But that's not what this video is, it's a personal reflection, and personally, I'm petty as shit. Bring back Legends, not even expensive ones, nice, cheap, and cheerful ones. God, I hope the Cyberworld figures are this scale and not this scale. They're still not out at the time of writing, so we'll just have to see.
Number 15.
The Tetra Jets are back, baby! After a few years out of the spotlight with naught but a QC issue Riddle's premium finish outing, we're finally graced with a wonderful return to form. And sure, one of them is pretty weird, all things considered, but he comes with a retool of a pretty damn good figure, right? Yeah, about that, mate. They kinda buggered it up. This should have been a home run. It's already drawing on a pretty great source material. The Hound mold was awesome, and it continues to be so with a fresh new Earth-based Detritus. Wonderful to see Detritus getting his own mold. Wonder if they'll turn it into his obscure repaint. And the retooling is pretty good here too, don't get me wrong. They've not made a lot of changes, but the changes they have made work for the mold quite well. Unfortunately, where this figure falls short is the build quality. The plastic on this thing feels and looks like a KO, and not even a good one, mind you. It feels super lightweight and looks incredibly desaturated, even more so than the Packmate that is literally 85% turquoise and nothing else. This doesn't hold the qualities of Hashtag plastic. I don't know what material they're using, but it's shit. It not only makes this thing look awful, but it makes converting him a massive pain. The legs frequently get stuck, which has never been an issue with any previous versions of this mold. Then when you finally get them unstuck, they fall apart mid-transformation. Then the arms don't want to stay in place, and even when they do, they stick out way more than any of his mold mates. Admittedly, this may be a personal results may vary kind of thing. Perhaps I got attacked by the QC gremlin, but from what I'm seeing, this is just a piss-poor attempt on the manufacturer's part. This could have been great. There's effort in the design here, and that's ignoring the fact they made another after the fact. It still had the potential to be good on its own merits, but design isn't the only thing that makes a good toy. You gotta make sure your materials work properly, and here, this ain't it, Chief.
Number 14.
I made my stance on MPG Raiden very clear in a previous listicle video. While the combined mode leaves a lot to be desired, I very much appreciate what they did with the individual robots. They're marvels of engineering between robot and train, and take me right back to my childhood, growing up as a child of 2 English teachers working in Japan. Are the G1 versions better? Honestly, yeah, I'd say so. But these are still all really good. Well, except for Yukikaze. It's a damn shame too, because after Shoki and Getsue, I was genuinely excited for this outing. Imagine applying the same level of engineering as Getsue on a bullet train. That would be awesome. But no, instead we have the leg engineering from hell. No matter what I do here, these simply refuse to stay together. No matter how hard I squeeze, these keep giggling to themselves the moment I leave the room and coming undone, forcing me to fix them. And that would all be fine if the rest of this robot was any good. But aside from a passable robot mode, there's not a lot lot here. It's a train bot with an okay head, I suppose, but that's about it. Not even the green stands out. It's too reserved all around. And the alt mode, I just get nothing from it. It's just a less interesting version of Shorkey, an observation that will piss off train fans, sure, but I just don't get anything from it. Yes, it's quite long, but given how dumb the engineering is, that's not particularly impressive. Look, this figure's placement really is mostly down to the legs. If those were fixed, this would be an okay release. Not a good one, but certainly not one needed to be put here of all places. But I'll be honest, fully accepting my bias, this ruins the toy for me. It takes something mediocre and plunges it into worst member of the combiner territory. Ah well, there will always be a worst member anyway, so I guess this is just to be expected. Just glad it wasn't on the level some of the other combiner members will be in future lists.
Number 13.
For the 2022 lineup, I sort of forgot Kickback was a thing. Looking back, I think I might have been more open to including him if I actually paid attention. But for whatever reason, I just never put him on the list, so consequently, I never put him in the video. I will make no such mistake with the follow-up. Kickback might be in a nebulous area where you can't tell whether he's good or not, but Shrapnel well and truly crosses that territory. Just a shit show of a robot mode with a head that has no personality, shoulder kibble that feels like it should do way more but doesn't, a torso wider than the shoulders of a shot put champion, legs that are stupidly painted for whatever reason so they chip really easily, and a torso that looks like they shoved chewed gum behind there. Like, functionally it's okay, but who thought this design was a good idea? It's not even G1 accurate. What's the excuse? What's the angle? Can't use accuracy as the excuse for the bug mode either, because this flat out isn't with how wide and flat it is. Much as I dislike the G1 toy, this is just infinitely worse. No defined head section, a stocky top part, legs that you can barely see, not to mention is missing two of them. Please tell me it's not because the guns are supposed to count as the back legs. Please tell me it's not because the guns are supposed to count as the back legs. Neither accurate nor stylized in any meaningful way, this bug mode just becomes a useless brick made worse by the fact that getting here feels unfinished. Not a lot of adjustments are needed to make this feel worthwhile. The retool into Chop Shop proved that. But like, these are the Insecticons. Some f***er is going to army build them. Can you at least put in the effort to make it, I don't know, passable? Not even good, just passable. Is that too much to ask?
Number 12.
New Age is a company I've always had an immense fondness for. Plenty often, I find myself dotting the best lists of any given year with releases of theirs. Time and time again, they tackle a project that should be a failure and instead deliver a pure banger. It's very rare that I find myself disappointed in what they do, and for some reason, the Rat Hide releases both seem to fill that spot. Their 1.0 release, which I have guard from, was always a little jank. To be fair, doing a toon-accurate Ironhide is a lot more complicated than it looks, but this definitely felt like growing pains for the company. The panel work never quite lined up and the feel wasn't really there. Allegedly, it was flat out copied from the Jizai Toys design too, without permission, and that led to a hullabaloo of its own. Regardless, a second version was sorely needed, and given New Age's prowess, they basically had this in the bag. So, why is this worse? Shatterglass Ratchet from New Age's 2.0 mold is probably the second most disappointing figure of theirs I've seen. The first being a topic that should soon see the light of day in full depth. Right off the bat, right out the gate, I'm sorry, this just looks blech. The proportions are all incredibly jank with stubby little arms that push all their kibble into the backs of the sleeves like SS102, because that worked so well the last time they tried that. The torso is appropriately shaped thanks to some really cool side flipping, but it just looks tubby next to the nothing midriff. And it's a real shame too, because the shade here is actually really cool. In fact, the turquoise all over is quite lovely, but there simply isn't enough of it. Instead, it's just a wash of boring off-white. Not even some evil Geneva Convention breaking medic symbols on his shoulders. Lockies can do it, why not New Age? The transformation? Okay, I can see what they were going for. In theory, the whole folding inside out thing should be a really cool way to do it and change the shape of everything. In practice, it feels about as icky as their Straxus, but I can see the intent. But the vehicle mode, it just feels wrong. Too many damn panels on this thing, it just ends up looking like a car crash. The metallic windows on the sides look incredibly dull. The white finish chips incredibly easily, which isn't common for the company. And this shape, it's sort of in this middle range of accuracy where it's got the proportions but not the sharpness, leading to just plain bloat. Just both modes feel bloated with weird bits that miss the point of the design. Is it better than the first attempt? Yes, there's no denying that, but it's not particularly good. Legitimately, you'd be better off buying the core class version. For 20 bones, you're getting a much more streamlined and well-rounded experience. I appreciate the effort New Age put here, I really do, and I acknowledge that by and large, they don't often have stinkers like this, but maybe that's what makes me extra disappointed here. It's extra bad because it's an exception to the rule. I don't know, it's just frustrating, because I know they can do better, but on a design I really like, they just didn't.
Number 11.
And so ends the trinity of Studio Series figures worse than their mainline counterparts. It's possible there are more, but these are the only 3 I've experienced both of. Nevertheless, this easily has to be the least interesting out of the 3. Like, how did this happen? The screen model is basically known for being really sleek and dynamic. And for all the faults the other 2 had, they at least managed to capture some of the dynamicism. Cheetor doesn't. He's the wrong color, which would be fine if they picked a nicer shade to the film, but they really didn't. Is this supposed to be bronze? This isn't bronze, this is refried beans. And god, so much paint on this thing, only for it to accomplish barely anything. Oh yay, they gave us leopard print, only for it to be barely noticeable amidst the sea of beans. His head is a whole heap of nothing, squaring off an already middling face design to the point where you can't even see the cat ears anymore. He poses okay, but given how lacking the sculpt is, none of it comes across as having a point. And when you do get to that point, the shoulders keep annoying you with their double hinge half measure to avoid trigger happy shoulders. Just commit to one or the other, motherfucker. Transformation is also a whole heap of nothing, doing jack shit to stop itself from basically being a robot doing a crouch. And the end result is probably the clunkiest cheater I've ever come across. You basically lock off any posability in the front legs, while the hind legs are the only ones that get motion. Who thought that was a good idea? Not only that, but while the front is locked in way too much, the back section doesn't even hold together. Come on, this is Beast Former 101. I understand that sacrifices need to be made for the sake of the budget, but 1, this is a Voyager, you should have more wiggle room than this, and 2, they already got this right 2 years ago. It doesn't even look good enough to justify its lacking articulation. Since they wasted all their budget on the leopard prints, the beans basically overtake the entire design. Not even the head sculpt can save it. This is more of a bear than a feline. Come on, you can do better. This isn't the worst Studio Series figure I've come across by any stretch, not even the worst Voyager, mind you. It's just making a Cheetor at this stage should not be hard. We've seen these characters done well before, and they've just completely dropped the ball here. I still just have to wonder, how do the figures that had an extra year in the oven often turn out far worse than the ones that were rushed to release? Shouldn't it be in the reverse? What happened here? How did you f up these 3 so bad?
Number 10.
It's Buzzworthy pack season, and you know what that means. Pack splitting time. As was the case with the last 2, there's always a figure you end up with that you just don't want. In fact, come to think of it, that's actually been a bit of a running theme for 2023. Grabbing figures I don't want to get the ones I actually do, putting them on a list, then forgetting they ever existed. Nevertheless, it was never going to be Auto Trooper. It's a killer mold, and this deco really lets it shine. G2 Cybertronian Trooper was also out. I actually don't mind the Skullgren molds, and in a genuinely awesome deco, it goes way harder than it did previously. I assumed it was going to be the Seeker, but surprisingly that wasn't the case. The deco on this is actually quite lush, and I'm a lot more forgiving of it now that they've swapped the torso paint out for this lush silver. Lush durable silver. It's still the Earthrise Seeker mold, but I find myself disliking it far less than both previous releases I've taken a look at. Unfortunately, no 4-pack can be perfect. There's always got to be one stinker, and this time, it's the Alicon, or I suppose Quintesson Trooper. Now, way back in Earthrise, the Bailiff was actually a pretty big surprise for me. I expected to hate this thing, but through a combination of a killer deco and smart retooling, it turned out far more lush than I anticipated. Quintesson Trooper unfortunately didn't get the memo for this though, only inheriting the retooling. It's basically a Bailiff and Alicon colors, and the Alicon was boring as hell. They've also leaned hard into this incredibly boring stone grey. It's hella dull, especially in beast mode, and combined with an already simple figure as is, yeah, I can't see myself keeping this around. Guess the Bailiff really was 1 in a million. I hereby judge this Snorefest guilty of being the weakest of the pack.
Freedom to the Wesley Cons.
Because that's who ended up taking my copy.
Number 9.
Talk about a disappointing duo of Predacon menaces. I don't think it's a controversial statement to make that Scourge was all around a massive disappointment. Not only was the character just devoid of any reason to care, where the fan theories were far more interesting than the actual outcome itself, and not only was there no mainline entry to offer comparison with, but the one collector grade toy we got was just kinda eh. Out of all the Studio Series outings from this film, he'd easily be the second most unfinished, first being Battle Trap, though Scourge isn't on this list, and neither is Battle Trap for that matter. For all the faults, I just don't feel any emotion surrounding them to commit putting them in a list article. Maybe that's why Kickback never ended up on the 2022 lists. He just didn't anger me like Shrapnel did. But no, honestly, it's his partner that causes me frustration. I might be a little silly with this, but honestly, this is in the same vein as Laserbeak in terms of frustration. With so few cores releasing as is, when one ends up being a stinker like this, it just isn't fair. Now, one way he does differentiate himself from Laserbeak is that he actually has redeeming qualities. Unlike Paragon of Boredom Noah Diaz, his robot mode is rather nice. The detail is decent, the head sculpt is honestly awesome, and the greys aren't actually that bad in person. And the bronze wash does a lot to make this figure stand out. I know a lot of folks got stuck with cracking ball joints, but mine's thankfully been okay, so I'm not here to criticize that. No, my issues are the alt modes. They're just nothing. Yay, he has a turret mode, but it's literally nothing. Oh, look, here's a target master. Again, literally nothing. Oh, wow, he can store on the back of Scott. It's nothing. These are just robots doing Pilates. You can't just have a robot scrunch into a ball and call it a day. That's not a transformer. That's a Borok! With how this turned out, this is one of the 2 core class figures where I haven't bothered hunting down the redecos. The other, of course, being Bumblebee from Laserbeak. If the figure isn't going to put in the effort to deliver a cohesive alternate mode, even on one of them, I'm not going to give in the effort to hunt down the Nene Novocaine. It's just another aimless core class figure that contributed to the price point losing its identity. Without a core theming, pun not intended, and with so many mediocre, well, I guess we have to put this here releases, it's no wonder core class died with waning retailer interest. Maybe next time they'll actually commit to a line instead of chopping and changing. Who knows?
Nobody!
Oh wow, another Earthrise Seeker that I hate! Whoop-de-doo! Look, honestly, as angry as I am at this thing, and as much as I dislike it, it's the same thing I've disliked this whole time. At this point, I only have myself to blame. I've fallen into the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Honestly, I've literally just written everything I wanted to say for a video being released soonish. At this point, I don't think I have anything left to say, except stay tuned and, for the figure itself, goodbye.
Number 7.
G2 Sideswiper is easily one of the best uses of the Siege molds, coming in with a sexy as black and an awesome red combo that blows deep cover out of the water. This mold already like you wouldn't believe, but this outing stands toe-to-toe with the best of them, and I'm really glad to finally have him. And oh yeah, he also comes with this piece of shit. I get it, there's not really a lot you can redeco flywheels into. It's basically a lose-lose situation no matter what you do. But for fuck's sake, this just misses the mark by a mile. The head sculpt is simultaneously way too thin and way too bloated. I know the G1 toy wasn't exactly a looker, but there had to be a better way to do this. The yellow paint is dull as shit, the red paint is dull as shit, the blue is in that weird middle shade that makes it look like a KO, the transformation joints in the feet feel like they're going to snap, and oh look, turns out they actually do! The vehicle modes look super bland. These bright colors make all the minor faults on the original stand out way more than they should. And why are the highlights on the tank part also reds? Red paint on red plastic? Talk about stingy. They probably only chose it because that paint is already used on the jet parts. This figure fundamentally doesn't work, doubly so considering it's actually backwards in terms of deco. I'm not saying so in comparison to the original concept. I'm not expecting this to fit into Blaster's chest. And I'm not criticizing this based on something it isn't. I'm judging it as its own thing, and as its own thing, it's an opportunistic, cheap as shit redeco that could have been good, but falls incredibly short. I may have been overjoyed to finally get G2 Sideswipe, but I'll be as equally overjoyed at the prospect of finally selling this thing off. Never to see this fucker again.
Number 6.
Yay, another 2-pack with a shit figure that I have to sell off. Oh my god! I really need to know what was going through the designer's head on this one. With all the inspired fembot molds designers have access to these days, why did you pick this one? Is it accuracy? I know that was the reason for Nacelle being the way he was, but Cascade never actually followed that archetype in the comics. And yes, I actually had to go back to the comics themselves and find it manually, because the wiki never bothered to update the photos properly. Point is, she's the most obscure of the most obscure, so even if this was accurate, nobody would notice. But turns out they had the freedom to pick whichever mold they liked, and they still somehow chose wrong. I suppose it's kinda neat she's not cursed with the awful clear plastic of the previous two, but is that something worth celebrating when she's the shittiest out of all of them? This deco is heinous. The figure looks more like a baby toy than an official Transformers product. Collector grade exclusive or no. Can't say the plastic is very collector grade, mind you. It's all fuzzy like it was put in an acetone bath. Guess I'd chalk that up to mold degradation, another reason not to dig this piece of shit up from the past. The year was 2023. We were already living in an era where fembots were better than they'd ever been. Designers no longer subscribed to the falsehood that women don't buy Transformers, so we can't put effort into fembot figures bullshit. This is a blemish from a bygone era, and in no way deserves to be packaged alongside a truly inspired retool. Guess it's just another addition to the sales pile. God, imagine if they actually made a 2-pack where both figures were fantastic.
Number 5.
I really wanted to like this figure. With every nook and cranny of my heart, I wanted this to be good and do well, so that third party could get out of its sunbow rut and start experimenting with cooler, more out there designs, both from other continuities and entirely original. But Trojan Horse Waspinator just isn't the figure that can do that. Looks-wise, I have no complaints. If your plan is to leave it in one mode or the other, you're in for a real treat. The head sculpt is gorgeous, immaculately sculpted, painted, and wonderfully stylized. The whole thing most certainly does not fall into third-party syndrome. It commits to an aesthetic and does it immensely well. The paint and tapographs are extremely crisp. The whole matte finish is divine, both on camera and off. And there's plenty of articulation here that should hypothetically work. And the helicopter mode continues to push the pretty. The panels are cleverly disguised and the paintwork is given extra room to breathe and shine. It gives me a glimpse into a world where Iron Factory Death Cobra was actually good. I have no complaints with how it looks. No doubts from what you see here, it's flawless. What I take issue with is how it feels. The plastic is insanely gross. Cheap as shit to the point of giving Zeta a run for its money. Legitimately, this is the worst feeling figure out of this entire list, and for how expensive it is, that's ridiculous. The hardware holding it together, screw, pin, and glue-wise, is incredibly weak. Trying to move this thing around is just asking for bits to fall off. And in many cases, they have as I was trying to get my fingers into it. But I dare not do that again after this video is done, because the transformation is nightmarish. No matter how many years I spend with this thing, it just repeatedly spits back in my face and laughs, screaming skill issue over and over, so to speak. I don't know who's responsible for Trojan Horse. Outside of knowing they paid for Amazing Spino's character design legally and didn't steal or anything, aside from copyright theft of course, but I do know they followed the same school of thought as Alien Attack. Faux parts have their use. You cannot make every minute panel the real part of the vehicle mode. Eventually, you're just going to end up with a nightmare of engineering that is wholly antithetical to the concept of Transformers toys. Toys! They are toys! If transforming your figure requires a doctorate in rocket surgery, you have failed! And it's a genuine shame because much like Amazing Spino's work, this figure genuinely looks fantastic. However, unlike his work, there's no consideration for why everything is in the place it is. It's no wonder they gave up before they released their Dinobots. As much as I would have loved to have seen it someday, with this style of engineering, perhaps we were spared. It does sadden me though, because this does seem like the last great bastion of third-party stylization that doesn't crash wholesale into third-party syndrome. Nothing since has hit this level of visual brilliance, at least yet. I do hope it does someday, and that it actually makes an impact, unlike a certain other helicopter in another form of media. Okay, so what we're actually going to do, we could, hypothetically, continue on the main quest, but there's a reason we're not going to. We're going to do some side questing first and level up the character. Ah, yeah, someone knows the sequence break. Someone knows the sequence break. Any cons? No? Okay, so we just need to find enough of these cons around the city. Just got to drive around and find... There we are! We got wall climbing. That's what we needed to sequence break. There we are. Now we can do the good shit. We can do the good shit now. I don't know which building this is on. It's been ages since I played this game. Maybe it's over this way. I think it might be over this way. It's on one of these buildings, but I don't know which one. Oh. 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 Here we go. Here we go. We now have the news helicopter. We are not supposed to have this yet. We are supposed to get access to the helicopter once we reach the Arctic levels. But no, we can now access flight way before we're supposed to in this game. But here's the thing about breaking the game. So we gotta go there. We're not supposed to have the helicopter yet, but we do. Now this one, you are supposed to be moving over to each of these. The whole point of this is you are supposed to drive around the police. It's supposed to be a very high-speed chase. Oh no, the police are after us. We gotta run, but we can't shoot them because it's dangerous. But no, look at this. I am just slowly going to move over here. Easy. Easy. Easy.
Number 4.
Seriously, I have got to stop buying titanium figures from my friends just because they're cheap. In my defense, 2 out of 3 had actually been pretty good, so I thought one more wouldn't kill me. Big mistake though, the Fallen is an absolute joke. Back when I got this was the only real representation of the character design available, aside from the absurdly difficult to come across Make Toys outing. And I figured for the price of a Legion figure, sure, why not? But even at that price, I really overpaid. This bloated piece of shit just doesn't do anything right. You've got the dinky ass head that carries none of his menace, a backpack that doesn't altogether due to the lack of tabs, proportions that make mainline Rise of the Beasts Prime look normal, ratchets in places that shouldn't have them while it lacks swivels where it should. You can't even stand properly half the time thanks to the combination of piss poor ankles and really shitty weight distribution with the diecast. Said diecast also causes a metric ton of chipping, exacerbated by the chalky black paint that I just love seeing on figures. Yes, I do. And if you thought the Age of the Primes alt mode was compromised, you ain't seen nothing yet. No cohesion at the front, no back section outright, so the flaps constantly wobble around. An awful turret section with nothing filling it in and guns that look like vacuum cleaners. And just look at the rotation axis. It's like Impactor on steroids. At least that had an excuse with the way it transformed. This is just lazy. Legitimately, the only thing I can give credit for is the flames behind the head. Although nowhere near as natural as the way the newer version did it, it is a cool effect. But like, that's the only thing he is going for him aside from being the first proper toy of Dreamwave's Megatronus Prime. It's just another toy that proves Titanium wasn't a toy line of hidden gems. It was a toy line with two good toys stuck in a bog of shit. Maybe it wasn't a good idea to give the Game Genie guys a shot at making Transformers toys. Maybe it also wasn't a good idea to make a figure entirely out of inappropriate diecasts. Please remind me not to buy any more of these. Don't let me torture myself.
Number 3.
Do I really need to explain this one? Seems pretty self-explanatory. I don't tend to buy a lot of 3PMP these days, especially since the move to Hypertoon accuracy, not a lot of figures have really tickled my fancy. If I want to take a chance on a G1 design, chances are Chug has done it at least to a reasonable level of quality. Most of the time. Yet for some bizarre reason, Fans Toys Jazz just called to me. Not particularly sure why, I just felt I really wanted a Jazz in MP scale. Preferably in toy colors, but I knew Toy Hacks would be on that eventually. Yes, I know they did a toy colors one eventually, but I didn't know at the time and I didn't particularly care. I got it, and for a time, I had some good fun with it. The engineering wasn't great, but it wasn't hateful either, and it was a really dynamic piece. Yes, it helps that Jazz's Sunbow model is one of the better ones, but then, after sitting on a shelf doing nothing, this shit happens. The pins in the torso just dislodge themselves. And apparently this isn't super uncommon either. Most units aren't affected, but it's enough that this can be called a thing. I must have transformed this thing less than 10 times in total before plonking it on the shelf. And somehow this shit happens. It's also way outside the refund period, and I've since broken sponsorship ties with the store I bought it from, so getting a replacement just isn't possible. Maybe I could repin and fix it, but honestly, I don't want to. This shit isn't acceptable, period. It soured my opinion on the figure overall. And digging deeper into the ongoing issues with Fans Toys, my opinion on the company is soured even further. Beyond years and years of pettiness, the QC game is completely absurd at this point. They were literally asking people to film themselves opening the box to prove the QC issues aren't falsified. But sure, go on about how bad Hasbro QC is. Man, this thing. The worst part is, I actually liked it. I was actually satisfied, and that joy was taken away from me through no fault of my own. If it was something I did, I'd acknowledge it and be able to put it to rest. But the toy f***ing disintegrated. I guess I'll wait for the eventual MP version, but in the meantime, bloody hell. This makes me so f***ing mad.
So a good friend of mine, DrLockdown, was selling a few pieces and he had this for sale and I was like, damn, I want to get this. So I've picked it up and he sent it out. I've got it out of the packaging and on the desk here. So let's have a look at it. I really want to get this transformed though. I've got to say, Doc really looked after me on the price here. So thank you, Doc. I'm so appreciating having this in hand. But it's not feeling very good though. Something's not right here, man. Oh, motherfucker.
Number 2.
Ah yes, this piece of shit. I don't think I've ever seen a toy so antithetical to the idea of a brick-based transformer. Pretty much every bit of the process has issues with it. An incomprehensible build, a compromised truck, an abysmal conversion, and a robot that doesn't do anything. Period. With the way this turns out, it just makes me ask if they even actually cared about doing this properly. This has to have been a cash grab made last minute to capitalize on the popularity of LEGO Optimus Prime. There's no way they could have genuinely thought this was a good collector grade brick set. Because this is absolutely collector grade. There's no way a kid is dropping 300 on this, and at least I can take some solace in that. Now, am I right to put this so far down on the worst list? I mean, the second worst figure of the entire year? For a figure I essentially got for free, maybe I shouldn't be so harsh on it. Honestly, yes, despite the fact I didn't spend a single dollar on this piece of garbage, I feel like I wasted those precious hours. Even making the video after the build was done, I just don't understand who could possibly have thought this was a good idea. And to reiterate, no shade on Barware themselves, who provided provided the sample. They genuinely did not know, and they were fully okay with me delivering a fair and honest review. But seriously, it's toys like this that make me cautious of the next round of LEGO Transformers. I mean, Bumblebee was bad enough. What if this design philosophy is what drives Soundwave? Only time will tell. We can but wait patiently. Of course, for all the Anguish figures can course, none have gone further than the #1 spot. Yes, I'm serious. In all my years, I don't think a figure has disappointed me more than Make Toys Thrust, though it's not actually for the issues it holds. Don't get me wrong, this is a genuinely frustrating piece. The existence of this figure is admirable, sure, trying to give us a new lineup of Masterpiece Seekers when Takara, at the time, was content to simply reuse the 2.0 mold, or I guess 1.5 as they like to number it, honestly doesn't make sense in my head. We're calling it 2.0. Even in the wake of MP52, they were still a pretty good option. But I don't know if it's just Thrust or if they're all like this, but it's just a complete shit show. Out of all the MP-alikes I've owned, even including knockoffs, this has got to feel the cheapest. The plastic is just a joke, sharing more in common with an Authentics figure than a traditional Masterpiece release. Not only does it feel cheap as shit, but it looks really ugly and melted. It appears great on camera, but in person, it looks like that one artwork from Sculptures by the Sea, where the ice cream van had melted in the sun. The face sculpt looks incredibly creepy, doubly so with the glazed over eyes that also aren't painted very well. Yes, difficulty with yellow paint and all, but that's no excuse on a $300 figure. The articulation is okay, I guess, and unlike the 3.0 Masterpiece mold, the wings can actually move backwards. But what good is that when between the weak as shit tolerances and the useless ankles, he just refuses to stand? Not even the fingers stay together properly. The amount of times I've had to go crawling around on the floor looking for them because they flew off while writing this is insane. The transformation sucks too, not on the same level as others on this list, but it's all sliding rails and weird spindly bits, made infinitely worse by the shitty plastic. And although the jet mode has a really nice shape to it, expertly blending the cartoon proportions with a realistic F-15, again, the details are washed out and the plastic sucks. And don't you dare tell me it's actually really good and durable. The broken tabs from a single conversion right out the box tell a completely different story. So now he doesn't even hold together properly. It's just not a good interpretation of the design, honestly, if I had to get stuck with a Thrust. For all my hatred with the Earthrise mold, I'd probably just go for that instead, especially with the reissue due later this year, at least in Australia. This doesn't feel like Masterpiece, let alone a knockoff of Masterpiece, which isn't saying much, sure, but still. He just feels like something you'd find at Paddy's Market, as opposed to something you'd go out of your way to buy. Legitimately, the Kubyan Bao knockoff of Thundercracker I got years ago felt more durable than this, and that thing became super brittle and fell to pieces. With that said, he's not exactly the worst toy on this list. If I were to rank him without my own bias, I'd probably place him between Waspinator and the Fallen, and compared to the shit we received last year, he doesn't even come close. So why does he take this list spot specifically? Why does he disappoint me more than any other figure I've gotten in my collection? Period. That's not hyperbole either. The feeling of anguish I feel for this is unparalleled. And it's all to do with two stories. Long-time viewers may remember I used to have this running gag where I would tout the phrase "f*** Mars Toys" in random contexts, but I never actually explained what Mars Toys was. You see, back in 2018, a small group of designers got together and started producing Cybertronian designs at a quasi-masterpiece scale. Their first release was a Cybertronian Bumblebee, predating the Origins version we'd receive in Kingdom-adjacent buzzworthy Bumblebee. It was quite well received and led to a Glyph version later down the line. Following this, they chose to start work on another project, Tetrajet Seekers. The design was wonderfully stylized and expressive, and even produced by an Australian, so I suppose I felt a sense of national pride about the whole thing. There was just one problem. They didn't choose to release the product normally, but rather through a crowdfund. You can probably tell where this is going. The crowdfund commenced and completed, and then nothing. People started to get uneasy, then unease evolved into frustration, then to anger. It eventually got to the point where people started forcing refunds en masse right as the PayPal refund period was set to expire. I was not this intelligent. Yes, I was in fact one of the people who backed this crowdfund, but in spite of this whole thing appearing very Fire Festival-esque, I chose to let it slide, and for that, I paid the price. Quite literally, it was only $100, which for a Masterpiece release is reasonably cheap, but that's still $100 I'll never get back. In time, time, news dried up entirely, and Mars Toys faded into the mists of stolen money. To add insult to injury, their final release was the flattened corpse of IDW Pipes, meant as an accessory for Mastermind Creations' Overlord. All those broken promises for a pile of trash. Suffice to say, people weren't happy, but the story isn't just their own. Their decisions cascaded to those around them in ways people could not have anticipated. Projects they were helping produce went down with the collapse of the company, leading to the death of the Unrustables line and the cancellation of the collector-grade Machine Robo figures, leaving so many releases unproduced. But perhaps worst of all was the factory Mars Toys were working with, forced to front the cost right at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Make Toys was that factory, with no releases lined up for a year and a full financial shutdown as the world plunged into chaos. It's pretty easy to state the obvious. For all intents and purposes, Make Toys died that day. They still release figures, make no mistake, but they are a shadow of their former self. All their planned new molds remained unproduced, and they've done nothing save for more Seekery decos through Pete Sinclair's convention, which itself is a bed of controversy as long as it aligns itself with Pete Sinclair, and through TF Source, which I'd rather not go into greater detail as they have a massive legal team and I do not. While I haven't laid hands upon the original trio, the Coneheads were definitely produced after the Mars Toys disappearance, when Make Toys lost ownership of their own factory and started outsourcing to whoever they could find. Thrust isn't just a disappointment because it's a bad figure in itself. It's also a painful reminder of the lies told, the money stolen, and the consequences of running away. Thrust is just cursed for me. Aside from the deluxe, which is genuinely quite good, the rest have just been a saga of frustration and being overly trustful. But it doesn't even end there, because this whole story has kept me up at night for many years. One thing I always like to do is find out the secrets behind each release. Figure out what made them the way they were. It's one thing to say something is good or bad, it's another thing entirely to explain why. And it's a whole other level to go deeper and find the first link in the chain. There had to have been a reason behind this. Why did Mars Toys do what they did? Why did those responsible run away with all the money? The only evidence I could find was hearsay on TFW and a paywalled recount on another YouTuber's Patreon, whom declined just sending me the information because it, in his words, would not be fair on those who have donated before me. So I circumvented that, and instead went to the source. Then I did something I've never done before. I stopped. For all my drive to shed light on the intricacies of Transformers design and history, and for all the Wei-Jang level showmanship I could glean from it, it's simply not my place. I found the end of the chain, I know what happened, and I will take that knowledge to my grave. The Mars Toys saga, contrary to my previous belief, isn't a story of lies and theft. It's a story of people trying to do the right thing and going beyond their means. Turns out there are no villains, and although there are those at fault, nobody truly set out to tank entire companies. But beyond that, it's not my place to say. Everybody involved more so wants to move on with their lives, and that I fully understand. Peace and healing doesn't require retribution, it requires personal acceptance. To drag the full story out into the limelight for the world to judge, it simply isn't right. And as such, this is where I stop. But that does leave me with a curious case. Not enough information for a full review, but too much for just a list article. A layered disappointment of a figure that has given me grief in many different ways at many different points in the past 2 years. Each level has given me new appreciation for the figure, but also a new form of anguish. And in the end, I just see this thing and imagine what could have been. And for that reason, I think this might actually be the worst figure in my collection. Not because it's bad, or because the people behind it were bad, or because the concept was fundamentally awful. No, because it's the culmination of a story of tragedy. I don't even know if I can bring myself to sell it off, as I do with many figures after these worst lists are done. Because for better or for worse, it means something to me. That thing it means to me is something truly heinous, but it is part of my story now, as well as part of a story of its own. And if anything, I'm just glad to finally put this story to rest. But as always, fan and public consciousness is a conversation, so to lighten up the mood, drop your least favorite figures from 2 years ago below. Yes, as always, it's late, but hey, at least things are picking up now. Gonna try to get at least all 4 overdue list videos out by the end of the year. But if not, at least the 2023 ones will be, with no changes to what I would have listed. And as always, even if you take it to your grave, there's a context for everything. Till next time.